Welcome to From the Editor with Larry Gordon, where newsmakers unpack the stories shaping the Jewish community.
Okay, hi, good morning, everyone. It's Larry Gordon from the offices of the Five Towns Jewish Times. And as talked about this week, our guest on the phone from Israel, that's on the phone, on our video screen, is Nitsana Darshan-Leitner, head of Shurat HaDin. It's called the Israel Law Project, if I remember correctly. And enlightened, we were going to talk last week when we were going to talk about the history of the Israel Law Center, Nitsana. But it seems that whatever you do, and you could bring us up to speed on whatever the project does, but it seems that you might be needed more than ever because I don't think the IDF can go into Sydney, but you certainly
Right.
can go into Australian courtrooms if you haven't already.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
so let's just start from the beginning and just bring our viewers and listeners up to date. The law project's about what, 20 years old now? I think I read
Yeah,
something like that.
yes. First of all, thank you very much for having me on your show, Larry. It's a pleasure to be here. And yes, Shurat HaDin has been existing for the past 25 years, fighting
Mhm.
terrorism in court and fighting Israel's enemies in courts worldwide. We started in the beginning of the Second Intifada when the blood was spilled in the streets, and we decided to take a role in the war against terrorism by doing what lawyers do best, to go after the pocketbooks of the terror organizations, and we filed lawsuits against terror organizations and their financial patrons. After 2 years, we were joined by the secret unit in the Mossad called Harpoon, headed by Meir Dagan, the legendary head of the Mossad,
Mhm.
which fought terror financing as well. And we collaborated and worked together, getting information from their operations and going after banks, after social media, after countries supporting terrorism, after terror organizations worldwide. Slowly, we began fighting other enemies of the state of Israel, like those who boycott Israel, Airbnb, Ben and Jerry's, those who want to undermine its sovereignty, like those who are organizing the Gaza flotilla, those who blame IDF soldiers for war crimes, representing the Israeli cause in the International Criminal Court, and the fight is lasting. After October 7th, we jumped in immediately and brought lawsuits against all those who financed Hamas, who actually allowed October 7th to happen. And I'm talking about the Palestinian Authority that gives them $1 billion a year. I'm talking about the Qatari charity foundations that gives Hamas hundreds of millions of dollars a year. I talk about Binance, where Hamas utilized these cryptocurrency companies to raise funds on the platforms, talking
Mhm.
about UNRWA that participated in the massacre and helped Hamas in its war. And in terms of fighting for the IDF soldiers, the war has no end. We have a ceasefire in Gaza, so called, but the chase after the IDF
Mhm.
soldiers only began. We protect IDF soldiers worldwide from pro-Palestinian organizations that want to indict them for war crimes, issuing arrest warrants in countries around the world. We brought a lawsuit against the International Criminal Court of the chief prosecutor in the court, Karim Khan, for going after Israeli leaders and not after Hamas. And you can just name it.
So, take for the International Criminal Court. Where do you bring the case against them? In what venue?
This case was brought in Israel. The allegation is that Karim Khan, the chief prosecutor, was supposed to help the families of the hostages. He called them up after he was boycotted totally by the Israeli government and asked to come and visit them after October 7th to learn firsthand what happened. He did.
Mhm.
He came. He had a personal visit. He promised to help. And when he went back to The Hague, he issued arrest warrants against Prime Minister Netanyahu and back then Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, where we demanded, right when October happened, to issue arrest warrants against, not against those who are in Gaza, who don't care about the law, who don't care if they are have international arrest warrants against them because they are not crawling out of the tunnels and leaving Gaza, but against those who are sitting in Doha, the leaders of Hamas that we see. Once you scare them, once you show they have no immunity, immediately put the right pressure on Qatar to jump in and to release the hostages. That was the International Criminal Court chief prosecutor was supposed to do long ago when Shurat HaDin filed the first complaints against the Hamas leaders, and it failed. Therefore, it's
So
been sued in court.
that case was filed where? In Israeli courts?
Yes,
Now, Israel is not a member state of the ICC.
indeed. And therefore, Israel does not grant immunity to any official of this court. This is why this case can go forward in Israel.
So President Trump believes that it was him who scared Hamas into releasing the hostages, or was it a combination of?
I agree. I agree. It's indeed a combination. Listen, you can think what you think about Trump, but Trump worked miracles on this hostage release deal. He was the only one who was able to do something we Israelis did not even think or dream was possible, to release all the hostages in one time,
Right, right.
without withdrawing from the Gaza Strip, without leaving Hamas in power. He did that. Now we're going into the second stage. And indeed, it was a combination. I must say that without the strike that Israel did in Doha against the leaders of Hamas over there, telling them that they are not immune, showing Qatar that they can go into their country and strike their guests over there, without this, their release would not have happened.
So just to clarify, we love President Trump here in this program anyway, and that's the program is viewed around the world in different venues, different areas. And there's been a president like him in the history of this country, and there probably never will be one like him again. But that said, so are you suing the Qatari government?
Yes, we are not suing the Qatari government because the Qatari government has immunity, but we are suing the vehicles where the Qatari government used in order to fund Hamas. We're suing the Qatari charity foundations. We are suing the Qatari national banks. We are suing everybody that facilitated these hundreds of millions of dollars that went from Qatar to the hands of Hamas in Gaza. Because we
So
know that Qatar was the mother of October 7. And until now, Qatar was not designated by the United States or even by Israel as an enemy state. It's a fatal mistake. I call our Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, and I call President Trump to ignore the financial interest he can find in Qatar, to ignore the $400 million plane he got as a gift, to ignore the military base that U.S. has in Qatar's land because it can move it to any other country around in the Middle East, to ignore all this because the life of the Israeli citizens and let alone the life of the Western world is more important than these financial interests.
all right, so I want to talk about some of the successes you've had since you founded Shurat HaDin over 25 years. But first, before I get to that, tell Israeli soldiers, it's a tradition once they finish their military service, they like to travel the world. They like to go to India or to Senegal. I mean, are they risking getting arrested in some fashion? And what are you doing about those cases, if any cases like that exist?
Yeah, there are pro-Palestinian organizations, especially one called Hind Rajab, on the name of a Palestinian girl that was killed during the war. And they are chasing IDF soldiers worldwide. They are preparing 1,000 cases based on the social media pages of the soldiers that, in the beginning of the war, filmed themselves blowing up buildings, or even not wearing uniforms going to Gaza, or even not going to Gaza, simple wearing uniform and building cases around these soldiers. And then they're going into countries that have universal jurisdiction and filing requests for arrest warrants against the soldiers that's stepping into these countries. And we have to fight it vigilantly because this is a real danger for the safety of the IDF soldiers. We
So are there
launch
soldiers? Are there soldiers that have been arrested when they stepped into one of these countries?
And many soldiers were warned that there are arrest warrants against them, and they were tipped by the Israeli consulate or by the Israeli embassy to back up and to go immediately back to Israel or to leave the country.
So
Yes,
which countries are the most dangerous, would you
we are
say?
talking about Belgium, we're talking about South Africa, and you know what? We're talking even about Britain. In Britain,
Mhm.
there is a very dangerous law from 1870, an old law that don't allow any British citizen to take part in a hostile act against a country that Britain is not in war with. So every British citizen who came as a lone soldier to fight in Israel and
Mhm.
fought in Lebanon
Mhm.
or fought in Syria is actually violating this law because England is not in a war with Syria or Lebanon. And there are lawyers, very prominent lawyers in Britain that working on papers to arrest British Israeli dual citizenship lone soldiers that worked in the IDF and now going back home.
So do you know of any specific cases that are currently being
I was asked to get involved in this case, and I was
Mhm.
asked to get involved with other cases because we launched the Flak Jacket Project, Shachbatz in Hebrew, that protect IDF soldiers. We it's an app that everybody has to download to see which alerts you're receiving because of any country that issues arrest warrants. It teaches the soldiers what to do when you leave the country, to delete, how to delete all the social media pages where the pro-Palestinian organizations receive their information, what to do if, God forbid, you get arrested, what
Uh-huh.
to say to interrogators. And we have in our legal war room more than 600 lawyers that are ready and prepared to provide any emergency aid for anyone who, God forbid, gets arrested in a foreign country.
So do you know of any cases like that in the last 2 years since October 7th?
We have cases which we coordinated with the Israeli consulate to rescue the soldiers out of these countries.
So the Israeli military have a mechanism by which they can
Of
whisk
course, of
whisk.
course. It's a multi-task job with the Israeli military prosecutor, with the diplomatic level, with the foreign ministry and the consulate and the
Mhm.
embassies in each countries, and Shurat HaDin.
What do you do in this case of dual citizenship? Okay, let's take Britain for example. I don't think it's relevant to the United States, but let's take Britain for example. A British young man or woman goes to join the IDF, and they go back after a couple of years. They go back to live in their house or their apartment with their parents, wherever they live. Are they at risk to getting arrested?
Yes, yes, there are. And you're
Uh,
right about United States. United States doesn't have this because United States is not in the war against Israel, and United States does not arrest IDF soldiers with American citizenship. But British citizens, it's a
yeah.
danger. Yes,
Well,
indeed.
and on a related topic, Nitsana, we're speaking to Nitsana Darshan-Leitner of the Israel Law Project, Shurat HaDin. On a related topic to what we were just discussing, you have a mayor-elect in New York City who says he's going to arrest Prime Minister Netanyahu if he
Yeah.
comes into New York. I mean, that must have got caught your attention, that case.
Yes, definitely. It did caught my attention. But as I said before, United States does not plan to arrest any Israeli officials, including the prime minister. And
Right,
since it's not a member of the International Criminal Court, it doesn't
right,
have to honor
right.
these international arrest warrants. However, Mamdani is a danger for the Jewish state, for Israeli initiatives. They already said that he's going to boycott, for instance, the Technion program that they have in Long Island. So we in Shurat HaDin are launching the Manhattan Project,
Okay,
where we are
that's
going
second.
to,
That's the second
yeah,
Manhattan Project.
yeah.
The first one
Well,
was the
that's
nuclear bomb.
what it's it going to be a nuclear bomb because we
Okay.
are going to scrutinize and to map all the junctions that New York City has with the federal government, where the New York City relies on the funding of the federal government.
Mhm.
And once Mamdani does any act against Israelis based on nationality or against Jews based on nationality, this is an act of discrimination, which is a
Hmm.
violation of the federal law. And
Hmm.
there is where we are going to act and move against the New York City funding in the Federal Reserve, federal government
Federal
funding.
government. Well, President Trump made it pretty clear that even before Madonna was elected, that if he gets elected, that he's going to spend $9 billion. I think that New York City receives from the federal government, and he said very clearly, even before they met, I don't think anything was accomplished by the meeting. It looked like more like a perm spiel than
Yeah.
anything else when they met, because he said Mondani said that Trump was a fascist and a despot, even after they met.
Right.
Uh,
And we
so
will
so
teach and we will show Trump where exactly this money is hidden. If it's in pension funds, with the New York municipality workers, with anything that has to do with the federal government.
all right. So for example, you mentioned pension funds. You have New York State has really many, probably hundreds of millions of dollars invested in Israel projects. Of course, he doesn't have the ability to do anything on a New York State level. That's the governor's
Right,
domain, so to speak.
right,
So
right.
Mamdani does not have the kind of power that he believes he has.
True. Indeed, indeed. But if he has any power on his New York City municipality level, this
Mhm.
is where we come in.
All right, so it's 25 years, like you said at the very beginning, since you founded Shurat HaDin. What kind of, and I think you were probably motivated by victims of terror and how they affected families around the world, and you won cases against terrorist groups that
Yes.
resulted in financial compensation to families. Can you tell us about a couple of those cases?
Definitely, definitely. We won judgment against foreign countries like Iran, like Syria, for hundreds of millions of dollars, which we collected on behalf of the victims. We went after Iranian assets. For instance, there is a building in New York called 655th Avenue. It's
Hmm.
partially owned by the Iranian government. It's going to be sold, and for I believe $700 million at least, and the proceeds will go to the terror victims. We have lawsuits against the banks that provided financial services to terror organizations, which settled the cases out of court and paid billions of dollars compensation to the victims. We have
Hmm.
lawsuits going on against the Palestinian Authority, which we won in Israel and the United States. In Israel, we enforced the judgments for hundreds of millions of shekels against the tax money that Israel collects for the Palestinian Authority on a monthly basis. You're talking about $3 billion a year. And in the United States, I must tell you that I'm very, very proud of the last decision we received in the Supreme Court of the United States just a couple
Hmm.
of months ago in a case that we filed against the Palestinian Authority back then in the beginning of the Second Intifada, which went to trial in the federal court in New York. It was a jury trial against the Palestinian Authority on behalf of 10 American families that the perpetrators of the terror attacks were employees of the Palestinian Authority, people that received funds, salary, instructions from the Palestinian Authority. And when the trial opened, the Palestinian Authority had a defense and said that indeed they were they were their employees, but they were rogue employees who did the attacks after work hours. And it wasn't their intention to kill
Yeah,
Israelis.
uh-huh, uh-huh. They did
You
it after they punched out.
exactly. You can believe that the jury did not bite, especially when
Right.
the Palestinian Authority keeps paying the pay for slave policy to these very terrorists that are sitting in the Israeli jail, and gave a
Yeah.
judgment against the Palestinian Authority for $655 million. This judgment was vacated on appeal because of lack of personal jurisdiction, but in June last year, the Supreme Court reinstated personal jurisdiction and said something very important. The Supreme Court said that if the Palestinian Authority pays money to the murderers of American citizens, there are ties to the United States, and it cannot hide and say that there is no personal jurisdiction to put it on trial in the United States for terror attacks. Now we are back in court to reinstate the judgment for $655 million.
And if you win that in court, what how do you get your hands on their assets?
I
They
will
have
take the
money in
judgment, take it to Israel, and in Israel, we'll enforce it against the tax money.
tax
As I said
money.
before,
Hmm.
$3 billion a year. The Palestinian Authority will have to pay a fifth of it to the terror victims.
Now, what about let's talk about what happened today in Sydney, Australia. Okay, Australia is has a small but very long historical Jewish population, both Sydney and Melbourne. Um, but the Prime Minister, I mean, they're one of the few countries that recognize the Palestinian state, and has been very critical of Israel. Where could you come into the picture in the aftermath of what happened today? 30 people injured, some critical condition, 12,
Right,
12
right.
killed. It's very sad. Uh, it's really devastating.
Of
But
course.
it's an outgrowth of there's the language facilitates this kind of action. Okay, let's say the people that do these things, and according to what I read, I mean, Australia is supposed to have the strictest gun laws in the world. But
Yeah,
bad guys trying to get their hands on guns. That's why it's a ridiculous thing to say that if we
right,
could have better
right,
gun control laws, there would be less
right,
shootings like the one
right.
yesterday
Listen,
in Brown University.
it's 100% the fault of the Australian government, this entire terror attack. Taking aside for a second the Iranian plan behind this attack, talking just
Hmm.
simply about the Australian government, because Anthony Albanese, the Prime Minister of Australia government,
Hmm.
was warned again and again by the Israeli Mossad, and 3 months ago by Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of the government of Israel,
Hmm.
that there is an organized, escalating campaign of anti-Semitism against Jews in his country. And he
Hmm.
was warned to take the proper step in order to stop it. Because we saw from the beginning of the war, right after October 7, massive demonstrations in the Opera House of millions of people rooting for Hamas, calling from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, chanting for Hamas, and defaming the state of Israel. And the police did not do anything. The Australian government kept silent. Later on, we saw it in the campuses where there were areas which were banned for Jews in Australian campuses. When you isolate the Jews, you send a message that Jews are lower level than regular citizens. And then there were kosher market that was attacked and a synagogue that was attacked, and it came to violence, and yet the Australian government did not do anything. They did one thing when they were told that the attack of the synagogue was planned by Iran. They cut off relationship with Iran, but that's not enough to shut down the incitement to anti-Semitism that went on in its country, and in the end, it blew up. Now, that's on one hand, and on the other hand, is the Iranian government. Iran, for the past 2 years and even more, was trying to carry out attacks around the world against Jewish people. In Israel, they created networks of
Hmm.
spies to give them information, to map houses of Israeli officials, to burn forests in order to bring the security forces to shut them down. Many attacks were perpetrated and planned by the Iranian government, and now we see it's going into Australia. So American
So I hear you.
citizens
Hmm.
that were killed in this attack can bring lawsuits against Iran in the United States. But
Hmm.
I would certainly encourage Australian citizens that were killed or injured in this attack to consider very heavily a legal action against the Australian government. Quiet, when you keep quiet against incitement to terrorism, you are allowing it to blow up in the end. Words, I always say, can really kill. And this is the example.
I think we're finally coming to the realization that we're watching free speech, being taken to an extreme where it turns into violence, which I don't think that was the intent of the founding fathers. Just one more thing. Let's talk about that building in Manhattan again. You said it's at 650 Fifth Avenue.
It's called 65th Avenue. Yeah, I just was in Manhattan last week and I saw it.
Yeah.
It's
So
standing
are
there
there
waiting
are
to be
there
sold.
are there tenants in are there tenants in the building?
Yes, yes, of course, it's occupied. As a matter of fact, the reached an agreement because we are not selling it now because the market is a little bit low. We're waiting for the market to go
Yeah.
up again.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
But that's its worth, and we have a judgment in the Supreme Court of the United States assuring our part in the sale of the building on behalf of our victims, of course.
So what do you think? What do you think the building is worth today?
It used to worth $700
$700
yes.
million dollars, and so it's worth a little bit less today. You're hoping the market turns around. Who are
Yeah.
the plaintiffs? Who are the plaintiffs in that case?
The plaintiff, a variety of plaintiffs, most of them from the Second Intifada in
Mhm.
Israel.
So you're talking
If
about
you re-
2002, 2000, 2002.
yes, yeah, exactly, exactly. Many buses, if you recall, were blown up by
Hmm.
Hamas
Hmm. Hmm.
during these years, and they were linked to the Iranian government, and therefore they won judgments against the Iranian government.
So when that building sold, those families will finally get some financial compensation for their losses and for their pain and their suffering.
Right.
Excellent. I
Yes, and I
think,
always say that no money can bring back life,
of
but
course,
money gives a measure of justice, a measure of
yes,
compensations for the
yes.
terror victims.
Yes, well, I think you might be one of the secret weapons that Israel has that I think can really speak the international language. If it costs them money, if it costs them hundreds of millions and billions of dollars, like in the case of the Qatar, or the fact that they're housing and hosting terrorist leaders. I think uh, costing money is like an international language that everyone understands. I want to thank you for your time.
Absolutely.
Thank you for joining us, Nitsana. And
Thank you very
hopefully
much.
we'll be able to speak again soon under better circumstances with good news. Thank you very much. Have a good
Hopefully. My
night.
pleasure. Take
Okay,
care.
be well.